just wanted to thank you for inviting me to speak. In the process, I have met old friends, and I'm sure by the end of the session, we'll make many new ones. The whole session is about fraternity or universal brotherhood, or Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam as we call it in India. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means the world is a family. So I ended up speaking in this session because of my medical background. Somehow the past never leaves you, although these days I speak more on spirituality rather than on medicine. But knowledge is indivisible, and there are borderline areas, and one can always relate one thing to the other. So that's the type of attempt that I have made today. So now I can go to screen sharing.
Hello. Okay, you are.
Yeah.
Fine, sir.
So the topic, as Father Augustine told you, is coronavirus pandemic in relation to the nation soul of India. And the reason I have put this particular picture in the background is that as you would notice, this particular gap between the greenery has a rough resemblance to the map of India. And like this fuzzy border here, in fact, when it comes to the nation soul or the culture, that doesn't have as rigidly defined boundaries as we have in geography. And I think that is the type of symbolism I thought this picture would convey. So although I'm calling it the nation soul of India, it refers to the region as a whole, and to some extent the entire world, because after all, human nature is basically the same everywhere. Before I go further, let me pass on to all of you the love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. The first question that arises is, why call it the nation soul? Does a nation have a soul? Actually, a nation is more than a piece of land. Looking at the world as a whole, the world has been regarded as a goddess in India, as a Prithvi Mata, Dharti Mata, Vasudha, and also in Greek mythology as Gaia. And this has been revived further from a scientific angle in recent times by the Gaia hypothesis. So in fact, the piece of land which we call a nation has a certain distinct personality, and it is in a dynamic equilibrium with the people that inhabit it. And therefore, in a way, we can say that the nation does have a soul, and this is intimately related to the culture of the country or the region. What is culture? Culture is the product of a long shared past. And because of this long shared past, people who have shared this past come to behave in a certain way, and they respond to events in a certain way. And that is what is particularly relevant to today's discussion, how people with a cultural difference might respond differently to an event like the coronavirus pandemic. Every culture has a defining ideal. And the defining ideal of the Indian culture is spirituality. And as Sri Aurobindo has said, spirituality is indeed the master key of the Indian mind. The sense of the infinite is native to it. So the defining ideal of the Indian culture is spirituality, and correspondingly we find that it gets reflected in our creative endeavors, art, music, dance, literature, architecture, and so on, and also in our outer life, in our language, behavior, and our responses to events and circumstances. So in fact, spirituality permeates all these areas in India, because that is the master key to the Indian mind, or the defining feature of Indian culture. So what is relevant today is, how does this ideal, that is spirituality, express itself in our responses, particularly the response to the coronavirus pandemic? Spiritually speaking, the pandemic is an event, and all events are an expression of the divine will. And we also believe that the divine will works only for the best. And therefore events are neither pleasant or unpleasant. They may be perceived so, but in fact, since they are an expression of the divine will as well as the divine wisdom, they are a gift. They come to us with a purpose, and they have been given to us with infinite love by the divine itself. So the gift is given with a purpose, and the purpose may be individual or collective or both. Why this is important to understand is because in general, traumatic events in life, difficulties in life help a person grow spiritually, and therefore these events have a purpose in an individual's life. But when so many people have died and so many people have gone through many difficulties in the coronavirus pandemic, it may look cruel and inappropriate to say that it had a purpose in their lives. But then it could have a collective purpose. And by the collective purpose is meant some degree of upliftment of the human race as a whole. Sri Aurobindo has put this in poetic language in his epic Savitri. Thy acts are thy helpers. Whatever we do helps us. All events are signs. They are like the signs on the road which guide us in a certain direction. Waking and sleep are opportunities. All these are given to thee by an immortal power. This is in keeping with the spiritual philosophy of Sri Aurobindo, which is a highly life-affirming spiritual philosophy. It doesn't reject worldly life. It doesn't say that you can go and practice spirituality only in a forest or on a mountain top. What he has emphasized is that you can bring spirituality into everyday life, and in fact everyday life itself helps you live a spiritual life. So more than saying that spirituality helps us to living a worldly life, it's the other way around. Worldly life helps us in being spiritual, leading a life which is basically spiritual, because we are all spiritual beings, and without that the vicissitudes of worldly life, we would not be put to test. So in fact they are all tests, success as well as failure, and in that sense whatever we do and whatever happens to in our life is an opportunity given to us by that immortal power to facilitate our spiritual growth, which is the very purpose of life. And this applies to individuals as well as to communities, societies, nations and the world. Now let's see to what extent spirituality has determined the Indian response to the pandemic. Here there's not enough data available, but I've tried to hypothesize what the response perhaps would have been in India as compared to that in the West. While the defining feature of the Indian culture is spiritual, the defining feature of the Western culture, at least during the last 500 years since the European Renaissance, has been rationality. And the rational mind, in response to an event like this pandemic, has a tendency to go into panic and to be afraid. So panic and fear would be the typical response, because while the virus has affected only a very small percentage of the population, and of those who have been affected, very few have died, one cannot really get an assurance at the rational level that it will not happen to me or to my near and dear ones. So the maximum assurance that we can get at the rational level is statistical in nature, that the probability of my dying or of any of my near and dear ones dying is extremely small. But that is not a guarantee. That is only a consolation. That gives some solace, but that is not an assurance. That is not a guarantee. In contrast, if we look at the same event from the spiritual angle, we can assume that God loves me, and if we have that faith, we feel that there is a special protection available from a higher power. Not only that, if that protection fails, we are ready for accepting everything. Accepting everything because it is God's will. It also reflects God's wisdom, and therefore there is something good in it, and eventually all will be well. Time will unfold events and we will discover what was good about what has happened. And sometimes the acceptance also comes from feeling that, well, it is a punishment for our sins, and as individuals And as a species, the human species, we have done enough wrong to this planet to feel that maybe this is a punishment for those sins, and that type of ideas have been expressed in the last 1.5 or 2 years. Now, if we look at it, look at these two different types of responses, one arising from a rational approach to life and another from the spiritual approach to life, we find that the spiritual approach leads to a much greater peace of mind. And modern medicine has now put this body-mind relationship on a scientific footing. It's no longer just hearsay or an intuitive feeling, but now there is scientific data available showing that the mind has a profound influence on our immune system. When we are cheerful, relaxed and at peace, our immune system becomes strong. When we are under chronic stress, when we have an emotion like panic and fear, that leads to a weakening of the immune system. And what protects us in the ultimate analysis from all infections is our own immune system, because there are experiments which have been done long ago. Even if you spray a person's nose with a flu virus, only 10% of the people who have been sprayed that way come down with the disease. The rest are able to overcome the disease and they don't fall ill. And that is the reason why, in spite of all of us breathing the same air, very few have actually become symptomatic. And that is because the rest have been able to overcome the disease using their own immune mechanisms. And in many cases, there were absolutely no symptoms. The person got infected, overcame it, and remained blissfully unaware of the fact that he was ever infected. So the type of peace that the spiritual approach to life inspires is protective in nature, and some data indicates that the fact that India has done better than many other countries with the far better medical facilities may be because of the type of response that the Indian population had to the pandemic. When we look at the deaths per million population, and this is the latest data accessed this today itself, the deaths per million are 1959 and 1893 in the UK and the US respectively, and these are very similar figures. India is way below these figures at 317 deaths per million population so far as a result of the pandemic. And the case fatality rate, that the number of people who die if they are infected, and that is about 2% in the UK and the US and 1.34% in India. So from both these major indicators, India seems to have done much better in spite of poorer medical facilities, and this might have something to do. Of course, there could be many other explanations, but this could be because of the way Indians instinctively have responded to the pandemic, not with so much panic and fear, but more with a sense of acceptance and accepting it as something that has come from the divine and therefore has to be accepted peacefully, and we have to see what is positive about it. But this response is not really limited to India, because India doesn't have a monopoly on the spiritual approach to life. People with that approach exist all over the world, and again, as Sri Aurobindo has said in his major work, The Life Divine, right on the first page, he says that the earliest preoccupation of man in his awakened thoughts, not all the time, but in his awakened thoughts, the earliest preoccupation of man has been the same all over the world. And not only it is his earliest preoccupation, but it is also his inevitable and ultimate preoccupation, because it has survived the longest period of skepticism, and this aspiration, this preoccupation, returns after every banishment. I saw it myself in I think 2001. I went to Russia, where religion had been banished for more than 70 years. After the revolution of 1917, it had been banished. But then as soon as the opportunity returned, once again the churches were back, and it seems that as nothing had happened. So it survives the longest period of skepticism and returns after every banishment. Skepticism has been the hallmark of the European Renaissance, and we find that once again this coronavirus pandemic as if brought back those elements of faith which had not really died, and this earliest preoccupation of man returned once again in a very significant way. But what is that preoccupation? It is also the highest which thought can envisage. So only in the awakened thoughts one has that preoccupation. But what is that preoccupation? That preoccupation manifests itself in the divination of Godhead. That is, visualizing a higher power. The impulse towards perfection. Perfection, again, is a symbol of divinity. Not the human perfectionism, but the type of perfection we equate God with. Man by very definition is imperfect, only God is perfect, and God's perfection is not the meticulous perfectionism of the human being. It's a different type of perfection which has more of beauty and harmony and love about it rather than meticulous attention to detail, technical detail. And the search after pure truth and unmixed bliss. So these are the manifestations of that earliest preoccupation of man, visualizing a higher power, an impulse towards divine perfection, and the search after pure truth and unmixed bliss. This is something universal, and therefore the spiritual response is unlikely to have been restricted to India. And the next question that arises is, if all events are a gift from the divine, has the pandemic been of some spiritual value to the world? It has certainly been a humbling experience because man had become rather arrogant because of all the achievements of science and technology and the way the communications and the transport had improved amazingly. And this experience has made us relook at the priorities in life and the purpose of life. This is something that we have all felt through all the messages and videos and everything that has been exchanged on the social media, WhatsApp and whatnot. And if one were to break it down into the type of things that, type of changes that came about as a result of COVID, life became slower. We learned to slow down. Our food became more healthy. We learned to overcome that urge to just leave home and travel. The moment there was a long weekend, people would start thinking of going somewhere, and we had forgotten the value of spending time with the family, and we had got so used to planning things and seeing that our plans always worked that we took our plans for granted. We learned to live with uncertainty, and ancient wisdom, which was considered obsolete, was revisited, be it in the form of yoga or Ayurveda or spirituality. But probably one of the most important things that happened was that there was a revolution in education. This resulted from the fact that many schools and colleges closed down, or they went in for online classes, which left students with a lot of freedom, and they used this freedom to explore if they could learn what they really wanted to learn. And the demand and the supply kept pace with each other. So many courses, some of them completely free and some of them very low cost, came up, which were available online, and a person could get in touch with the best of teachers in the world and learn what the person was really interested in, irrespective of where the teacher was and where the student was, anywhere in the world. So this created a sort of a revolution in education. Education became truly education in real terms, which means people started learning what they really wanted to learn, what they were passionate about, without worrying about degrees and certificates. And they could, through this, came in contact the best of teachers and the best of students all over the world. And as Samuel Johnson said, put a good teacher and a good student together and you can forget about what transpires between the two. So real education happened by this contact, and since it happened across countries, it created a feeling of one world. So the response to the coronavirus pandemic might have been different in India and the West because of the different defining ideals of the two cultures, spirituality as compared to rationality, but the difference has perhaps been more of degree than in kind. This is a picture postcard view of Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch where I live and work, and you're all welcome to come anytime. And if you have any comments and questions, or you want to subscribe to our free online magazine, The Call Beyond, you may send me an email, RAM for Ramesh, BIJ for Bijlani, and then work, rambijwork@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh, for the wonderful presentation. You have added a unique Indian strength to the conceptual responses to COVID, and your strong background in spirituality as well as in medical science was well reflected in your presentation as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Professor Gerald, do we have any questions collected there to post?
Any questions so far from those who are with us right now? I have a question. Spirituality is growing also in the United States. Many people have moved beyond, if you want to say, organized religion, and they are searching for a kind of a universal spirituality, particularly young people. And the role of spirituality can be take different forms. Some people experience spirituality, for example, in meditation. Some do it, like my daughter is involved in a spiritual dance program. So, do you think that the point that was made was that spirituality boosts your immune system? Is there any scientific evidence for this that you can say, again, the religion and science, that by having a spiritual focus, it actually boosts your immune system? Has anybody ever studied that scientifically?
Sorry, I couldn't get the last bit. Has anyone studied scientifically whether spirituality
boosts your immune system?
Our immunity can it be improved by spirituality? Any scientific evidence?
Yes, there are studies on spiritual practices like meditation, and they improve the immune system. And in fact, anything which relaxes the person can improve the immune system. Some of the responses can be very quick. There was one study in which they demonstrated an improvement in the antibody levels in saliva just after watching a 15-minute movie on compassion. It was on the work of Mother Teresa, and they found that it led to an improvement in the salivary antibody levels.
So we have an observation saying that perhaps the Eastern view from Margie Schneider, that the fear-based Western view actually contributes, in a sense, to inability to respond. Is that correct? Would you say that the spirituality helps the immune system, but when you don't have spirituality, you're more vulnerable, would you say?
That's right. Because then you are left to your own devices. A spiritual person knows that, yes, I may be weak, but then I have behind me the strength of a higher power for whom everything is easy. And that is basically how a spiritual person differs from a good person. Because a person can be a good person. How a spiritual person differs from a religious person is that unlike a religious person, he may not believe in any rituals and ceremonies and dogmas and so on. So then sometimes therefore it's felt that a spiritual person is just a good person. But then a good person can do a lot of good to the world, but when he faces a difficulty, then he's on his own. Whereas a spiritual person does believe in a higher power, and that is what gives him that sense of protection, guidance, and also the feeling that I am being taken care of. And if still something unpleasant happens, it will be also an expression of love, which I love that from that infinite power. I may perceive it as unpleasant, but actually it is meant for my own personal growth. So that is how a spiritual person is able to cope with the vicissitudes of life much better than a person who is just a good person from the rational point of view.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe there's a final positive note from one of the YouTube chats that we have received in our box. From Margie Schneider, I so appreciate the spiritual Eastern view regarding the pandemic than our fear-based Western view. This is only a comment and observation. You don't have to respond, I think, Dr. Ramesh. Okay, then we will wind up this session, this presentation, and move on to Job. Is it Professor Jerry?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Dr.